What's up, everyone? In this video, I wanted to go over some overlooked JRPGs that may have flown under some people's radars over the years.
Is that what I think it is?
I know the term hidden gem gets thrown around a lot on YouTube these days, so I'm gonna be fairly loosey-goosey with the definition. These won't necessarily be the most obscure games in the world. If you're an avid JRPG fan, you might already be familiar with a lot of these. But for people who mainly know stuff like Final Fantasy, Persona, Dragon Quest, or maybe series that are dead now but were really popular back in the day, like Breath of Fire, Suikoden, Grandia, Star Ocean, Wild Arms, hopefully you find some games on this list that you maybe haven't heard of. And if you have heard of them, then hopefully this gives you that extra push needed to finally try them out. I'm gonna do my best to include a variety of systems to try to spread the love a bit, but with that said, I may be a little biased towards certain ones over others.
And I like Nintendo.
Okay, with all that out of the way, let's get this JRPG Hidden Gem list underway. To start this list off, coming in at number 10, we have Thousand Arms from the original PlayStation. I'm not gonna lie to you and say Thousand Arms is a great game, but it is a really unique game with a lot of charm and was fairly innovative at the time. To my knowledge, Thousand Arms was the first RPG dating sim hybrid to come out in the US, long before series like Persona and current Fire Emblem made it popular. Now, was the dating aspect as fleshed out as it is in something like Persona, for example? I mean, no, the game came out in like 98 or some shit, but it was something different and it was pretty fun. Plus, it makes for an interesting experience when your mom walks in on your 10-year-old self in the middle of a date and is thinking, yo, what the fuck kind of game did I buy my child?
I was thinking about you too.
Anyway, dating aside, the game just oozes that 90s anime vibe. Like I mentioned earlier, while the gameplay may not always be the greatest, the characters and story just have so much charm. I think the more one-on-one battle system was a unique idea in theory. I just wish we could have used more of the characters at the same time. Anyway, I think that's enough rambling about Thousand Arms, so let's move on to the next one on our list. In number 9 on our list, we have Growlanser Wayfarer of Time for the PSP. Wayfarer of Time is the 4th game in a series that was largely not released in the US, so therefore it remains pretty obscure for most people. I'll be honest and say this is my first and only experience with the series so far, but I was really impressed with the amount of detail and content they put in this game. For example, certain dialogue choices lead to branching storylines later in the game which do affect the ending. Most JRPGs are fairly linear playthroughs, so stuff like this is pretty cool, I think. The combat in Growlanser is really unique, and if I had to simplify it, I would say it's something like a tactical turn-based system that plays out in real time. It sort of takes a mixture of both strategy and turn-based RPG elements and combines it with some Ogre Battle type gameplay. It's a little hard to describe in just a quick summary, so you might have to check out some gameplay videos to get a real feel for it. Overall, Wayfarer of Time is a very creative and ambitious game with some interesting gameplay mechanics that I don't often see get talked about too much. I just thought it deserved some more love, so here it is. Coming in at number 8, we have Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2 for the PlayStation 2. First of all, I'm including both games here because they're basically just one game split up into two, and secondly, I know Shin Megami Tensei is a popular long-running series, however, most of the focus these days is definitely more on the Persona sub-series, and to a lesser extent, the mainline games. DDS 1 and 2 were kind of just random one-offs that not a lot of people played unless you were already a fan of the series. What really set these games apart from the JRPG counterparts at the time was how much more darker and mature they were. While these are common tones for the Shin Megami Tensei series as a whole, a lot of other JRPGs had themes like the power of friendship, overcoming all, and stuff like that, whereas these games had demons eating people and shit. Yeah, it's a little edgelordy, I guess, but still, it's nice to get something different. Tone aside, the combat in these games is really fun as well and has that classic SMT targeting weakness, buff/debuff type of system. To put it simply, if you like Persona combat, you'll like the battle system in these games. With a fun battle system, a mature story, and some good character development, Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2 are some hidden gems that you don't want to miss. In number 7, we have Rise Fantasia for the Wii. First of all, little disclaimer here. I highly recommend to play the game without voice acting.
Strange. It's sunny, but it's raining.
The devil must be beating his wife.
Who? Beating his what?
Most people that have played this game would probably say similar things about it. Great hidden gem, unique gameplay mechanics, challenging boss fights, big towns to explore, but absolutely atrocious voice acting.
Beating his what?
He's got a point.
It's not like Chaos Wars level of bad, but it's only a notch or two above that, which isn't saying much. So yeah, if you want to take the character seriously, turn the voices off. Voice acting aside, Rise Fantasia really does some great things. The weapon system has this really unique element where through the form of Tetris-like blocks, you try to fit stat bonuses and effects in the space provided by the weapon, which changes based on what weapon it is in the first place. It allows for some great customization, and it's something I've never really seen done before. Like I mentioned earlier, the boss fights in this game are super challenging and fun, and sometimes in order to beat them, it's not that you need to grind more levels, it's just that you need to change your customization a bit. I wish more games did this instead of just making it a grindfest, you know? Anyway, I think that's enough about Rise Fantasia, so let's go on to the number 6 spot. Alright, in number 6 we have Legend of Legaia for the PlayStation. Let me just start this by saying that besides Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars, this was my first experience with a full-on, more serious type of JRPG. So with that said, I do have a bit of a soft spot for this game, but I do think it's warranted as well. I instantly fell in love with the creative battle system where you had to input commands with high and low punches and kicks to create combos. Much like a fighting game, but just done turn-based. These combos were really powerful, so it was a lot of fun to experiment around with a lot of different variations to see which ones you could find. I mean, yeah, sure, nowadays you could just look up all the combos on the internet, but back then that info wasn't as readily available, and it takes away the thrill of discovering it on your own. Another really cool thing this game did was that when you changed your character's armor, it actually reflected on the character's model in battles. Literally no other JRPG did stuff like this at the time, and even today, most still don't. Combine all that with a good enough story and some chillin' ambient music, and you have a solid hidden gem in Legend of Legaia. There was a sequel that came out for the PS2 later, but in my opinion, it wasn't nearly as good and lacked a lot of the charm that the first one had. So my recommendation is just play the first one. Coming in at number 5, we have Lost Odyssey for the Xbox 360. I know this game was fairly hyped upon release, mainly due to being one of Mistwalker's first games, which was a studio founded by the original creator of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi. I think it's become a bit of a hidden gem over the years, however. I mean, it was released on the 360, which needless to say, was not a popular JRPG console. Unless you played it when it initially came out, if you're more of a recent JRPG fan, it's unlikely that you've probably played it. With its Final Fantasy ties, it should come as no surprise that it draws heavy inspiration from the series, and in some ways, feels even more like a Final Fantasy game than Final Fantasy XIII did itself, which came out on the same system. It has that classic turn-based combat with some timing elements, some big towns to explore with a lot of treasures to find, a gripping and emotional story, and fantastic music composed by none other than the original composer of the Final Fantasy series itself, the legendary Nobuo Uematsu. My only gripe with the game, really, is that the 2 child party members, in my opinion, are pretty fucking annoying, and I really could have done without them. I mean, they don't ruin the game or anything, but I just wish their existence was not included. Still a solid-ass game, though, and one fine hidden gem at that. At number 4, we have Baten Kaitos Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean for the GameCube. While this game wasn't super popular upon release, I would say it's achieved cult classic status within the JRPG community since then, and it's not hard to see why. It has a beautiful visual aesthetic that takes inspiration from games like Chrono Cross, but still manages to do its own unique thing with it. Aesthetics are where the similarities end though, as the battle system is completely different. The combat in Baten Kaitos is an interesting combination where it infuses card-based elements in a turn-based system. Now, I know what a lot of you are probably thinking. Card mechanics? What do I look like? I have fucking red highlights in my hair, or I'm on a quest to save my grandfather's soul or some shit? Trust me, I don't normally like hard stuff either, but this game manages to make it fun, and it adds a layer of depth to the battle system, I feel like. With that said, the game just doesn't have a gorgeous art style and a really fun and unique battle system, but it also has a very good story with one of the biggest plot twists I've ever seen in a JRPG, and a really awesome soundtrack to boot. Now, there was a sequel, but in my opinion, while it was fun, it wasn't quite as good as the first one. Regardless though, they're both really good games and definitely worth checking out to this day. In number 3, we have Skies of Arcadia for the Dreamcast and the GameCube. I wanted to include at least one Dreamcast game on this list for variety's sake, but with that said, the GameCube version does have extra content and a reduced encounter rate, so that's the version I played and would probably recommend. Skies of Arcadia is like Baten Kaitos in the sense that it's achieved cult status over the years, but at the same time, it's also a standalone game, which makes it easy to overlook. It's a classic traditional JRPG through and through, with the cool setting involving being an air pirate, so you actually get to fly around the world and stuff like that. They really go all in with the pirate setting as well, as not only do you get to fly your ship, but you also get to participate in one-on-one ship battles and even round up a crew later in the game. I wouldn't say Skies of Arcadia does anything really groundbreaking or revolutionary, but its beauty lies in the execution. It has an engaging cast of characters, an immersive world, fun gameplay mechanics, and a good enough story. All of these elements come together to form a cohesive and well-balanced package that any fan of the classic JRPG formula is bound to enjoy. Coming in at number 2, we have Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber, for the Nintendo 64. While this game comes from a long-running series, it's pretty much dead at this point, and even when it was alive, it was always overshadowed to some degree. Not to mention, this particular game came out for the N64, which was a barren wasteland for JRPGs, which made this one get vastly overlooked. Anyway, Ogre Battle 64 has some fairly complex gameplay mechanics involving managing an army and sending out different squad units into battle, but once you understand them, it's a shit ton of fun, I think. While the gameplay can be really addicting, the main thing that kept me invested in this game was the story. It has a really deep plot with a huge cast of characters and some mature themes to make you question morality and stuff like that. Speaking of story and characters, this game has branching storyline paths based on the choices you make, which lead to different endings and give you access to different characters, which really creates a lot of replay value. Overall, Ogre Battle 64 is a super original and well-polished game that offers you an experience that you can't really get anywhere else. Despite how much I love this game though, I gotta say I love the number 1 spot just a little bit more. But first, I wanted to go over a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list. Septerra Core for the PC, while technically was made in the West, was definitely more of a JRPG with its gameplay mechanics and presentation. Arc the Lad Twilight of Spirits was a fun game for the PS2 that lets you switch off between 2 main characters throughout the game, each with their own different set of party members. Terranigma for the Super Nintendo will forever remain a classic to its fans for its very interesting and emotional story. Okay, with those out of the way, let's move on to the number 1 spot. Alright, to top off this list, we have The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, first and second chapter for the PSP and the PC. Even though these are 2 games, it's one big connected story, and the second game starts literally minutes after the first game ends, so fuck it, it's my list. Now, this series is getting fairly popular these days, so a lot of people may not think these games qualify as hidden gems anymore, but these first 2 games basically started the resurgence of the series into what we now love it is today. And being that they came out on older systems, a lot of people have passed them up for more recent releases. In fact, even the latest games released in this series are still working within the same world and plot established by these first 2 games, which just goes to show how deep the lore is, considering the series is like 10 games deep at this point. So yeah, even if these games aren't true hidden gems anymore, just consider it my way of spreading awareness to the series and trying to get people to go back and play the first 2 games. As you can imagine, the world building in this series is second to none, and these first 2 games really do a fantastic job at introducing us to this engaging cast of characters and settings while still telling a complete story. One of the things the series is known for that these first 2 games started is that after every significant story event, NPC dialogue changes, which actually gives you a reason to go back and talk to people. Listen, I could go on and on about these games, but this video is already long enough, so I'll just end it there. If you're a fan of JRPGs though, and haven't played these games yet, do yourself a favor and play them ASAP because they are absolute classics of the genre. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up another video. just wanted to say thank you to everyone who took the time to watch this, as always. If anyone is interested, you can follow us or support us at the links below. Other than that, till next time, guys.